What happens when the most respected man in Hollywood walks into a talk show expecting a conversation, but ends up face to face with a host who is determined to destroy his reputation on live television? When Denzel Washington sits across from Tamron Hall under the blinding studio lights, politeness dies fast, and what begins as an interview turns into a public duel where every question is a weapon and every answer hits back harder. In just 43 seconds, a disrespectful comment turned a promotional appearance into an absolute disaster that nobody saw coming. And trust me, this talk show won't disappoint you. It'll be worth every second of your time. Denzel walked out onto the set in a sharp gray suit, calm and confident. The studio lights hit his face, the audience clapped, and for a second everything felt normal. He smiled, nodded, and thanked the crowd before taking his seat across from Tamron Hall. She returned the smile, but there was something off about it, something tight, almost rehearsed. "You know," she said smoothly, tilting her head, "people say meeting you is like meeting Hollywood royalty." Denzel chuckled politely. Then she added, "But royalty tends to forget who pays the taxes." The audience laughed, but the air shifted. That wasn't a compliment. Denzel caught it right away. He leaned back, still composed, and said with quiet confidence, "Royalty serves." "At least the real kind does." Tamron's grin froze for half a second before she straightened up and changed her tone. "So," she began, shuffling her cards, "I have to ask you, some say you're impossible to work with. A perfectionist, controlling, maybe even arrogant." Her words were soft. Denzel smiled faintly. "I call it standards. People who fear excellence call it arrogance," a few audience members murmured. Tamron lifted an eyebrow. "Or maybe people just got tired of walking on eggshells around you." Denzel didn't flinch. His voice dropped lower, steadier. "I'd rather people walk on truth than dance on lies." The crowd went silent again, caught between admiration and tension. Tamron leaned forward and pulled out a small stack of papers from under her desk. The move looked casual, but everyone in the studio could feel the shift. "These," she said, tapping the papers, "are accounts from your last film crew. They say you refused to speak to grips and lighting staff, that you kept to yourself, acted like you were above them." The crowd stirred. Denzel tilted his head slightly, the faintest smile playing on his lips. "Interesting," he said evenly. "I had dinner with that lighting crew last month. We laughed for hours. Maybe your notes are from a different set." Tamron's tone sharpened. "Or maybe they were too afraid to tell you the truth." The audience gasped quietly, sensing the hostility now out in the open. Denzel's smile faded, replaced with a stare that could cut through glass. "Or maybe," he said slowly, "they didn't tell you the truth because you pay better for lies." The crowd let out a low sound, half shock, half awe. Tamron froze for a moment, then laughed, a little too loudly. "You've been living in Beverly Hills too long, Denzel. You probably think Trader Joe's is a person." Denzel leaned in slightly, his tone calm but sharp as a blade. "Funny thing is," he said, "I shop where respect is sold. You might want to check that aisle." The studio burst into a nervous laugh, but nobody missed the edge in his voice. Tamron crossed her arms and smirked. "You see? You can't help it. The ego just leaks out." Denzel didn't blink. "No," he said flatly, "that's called backbone. You should try it sometime." The room went silent, and Tamron looked rattled. Tamron's eyes narrowed. She had lost control of the interview, and she knew it. But instead of stepping back, she leaned in harder. "You've played the same noble black man your whole career," she said, her voice smooth but venomous. "Polished, flawless, untouchable, the safe version America likes." The room went completely still. For a second, even the cameras seemed to hesitate. Denzel didn't move. He just looked at her. Long, unblinking. The kind of stare that said more than words ever could. Then he spoke, calm but sharp enough to draw blood. "Did you just insult 40 years of work? Or every young black actor who looked up to me?" His tone didn't rise, but the weight of it filled the studio. Tamron tilted her chin, trying to keep the upper hand. "I'm saying you built a brand, not a legacy." Denzel let out a dry, humorless laugh. "A brand?" He leaned forward, voice tightening. "Brands fade. Character lasts. You should have learned that before you sold yours to daytime TV. A low murmur spread through the audience. Some gasped, others covered their mouths. Tamron's fake smile twitched. Her fingers tapped against her cue cards like she was trying to drown out the silence. At least I didn't sell mine to Hollywood Fantasy, she said, forcing a smirk, but her voice trembled slightly. That was it. Denzel stood up, the movement slow and deliberate. His voice echoed through the studio. Fantasy, he repeated. Lady, I earned every frame, every line, every scar on that screen, while you sit here tearing down people whose shadows you couldn't fill. The crowd broke into chaotic noise, some clapping, some gasping. The camera shook as one operator instinctively stepped back. Tamron's eyes darted to her producers behind the glass, but no one moved. Then Tamron's face hardened, and her voice came out louder, sharper, cutting through the air like a slap. You act like a saint, she fired, but everyone in Hollywood knows the truth. You're difficult, cold, unapproachable. You bark orders, people cry, but they can't say no, because you're Denzel Washington. The audience gasped. Her words hit like bullets. Denzel didn't flinch. His stare locked on her, calm but dangerous. And everyone in journalism, he said slowly, knows what happens when a host confuses cruelty with courage. The tension cracked. Tamron leaned forward, sneering. Oh, don't flatter yourself. This isn't cruelty, it's exposure. Denzel didn't blink. His voice cut like steel. No, this is projection. You don't expose truth, you perform it. You don't chase facts, you chase applause. Tamron's smirk twitched, but she forced a laugh. Let's not get emotional, Denzel. He shot back instantly. Emotional? You called me fake, arrogant, out of touch, and I'm emotional? His voice thundered, shaking the still air. Tamron crossed her arms, trying to look unfazed. Typical male deflection, she said, her words dripping with sarcasm. Denzel leaned in, smiling just enough to sting. Typical talk show tactic, he said. When you're wrong, play the victim. When you lose control, hide behind gender. Tamron's face tightened. You really think you're the victim here, she snapped. I think you walked in here expecting worship and couldn't handle real questions. Denzel stood now, the energy around him shifting. You mistake disrespect for journalism. You think humiliation is bravery. But here's the truth, Tamron. You're not interviewing me anymore. You're performing for your reflection, the crowd murmured. The whole auditorium was tense. Tamron's voice trembled slightly, but she pushed harder, desperate to recover. You can talk down to me all you want, but that doesn't make you noble. Denzel smiled, slow, cold, certain. No, he said quietly, but it does make me honest. Something this show could use a little more of the audience was shocked again. Tamron looked stunned, blinking fast to keep her composure. Denzel took a slow breath, the kind you take before saying something that matters. His voice was steady, calm. He looked straight into the camera. The real me doesn't need defending, he said. But since you asked, the real me buried friends who didn't make it out of the streets. The real me paid for kids' tuition without my name on the check. The real me builds. You just broadcast, the audience hung on every syllable. The rhythm of his voice, the stillness in his posture. It didn't sound like an actor talking. It sounded like a man reclaiming his name. Tamron scoffed, a bitter smile flickering across her face. Anyone can play the hero when the cameras are rolling, she said. Her words were sharp, but her confidence was slipping. Denzel turned his head toward her, eyes steady. And anyone can play brave sitting under studio lights, he said quietly. But when it's dark and the camera's off, that's when real courage shows up. He paused, letting the silence do the talking. The studio went completely still. You could hear people shifting nervously in their seats. No one dared to interrupt. Tamron looked around, her expression cracking for the first time. The control room stayed silent, the crew frozen behind the glass. Denzel leaned back, his voice softer now, but somehow heavier. This was never about journalism, Tamron, he said. It's about resentment. Yours. His words landed like a verdict. Tamron opened her mouth to respond, but nothing came out. Every eye in the studio was on Denzel now, and she knew it. Denzel's expression didn't change, but his eyes told the whole story. Controlled fury behind total composure. He reached up, unhooked the microphone from his lapel, and held it for a long second in his hand. The entire crowd watched in silence, no one daring to move. Then with one clean motion, he dropped it hard onto Tamron's desk. The sound cracked through the air like thunder. "You wanted a viral moment?" he said, his voice calm but dangerous. "Congratulations, you just earned one." Tamron leaned forward, voice trembling with a mix of anger and desperation. "You think walking out makes you right?" she fired back, her tone breaking as she tried to hold her ground. Denzel turned slowly, his calm almost chilling. "No," he said, each word precise, "but staying here would make me small, and I stopped shrinking for bullies a long time ago." The way he said it froze Tamron in place. He took a step closer to the desk, lowering his tone, his words cutting deeper. "You don't ask questions, Tamron. You set traps. You confuse confrontation with courage. But courage is standing in truth, not hiding behind cue cards and clickbait." The crowd murmured, caught between awe and disbelief. Tamron shot back, her voice rising. "You can't handle real questions. You came here expecting applause, not accountability." Denzel let out a low, humorless laugh. "Accountability?" he said. "No, what you're doing isn't accountability. It's humiliation. And the saddest part? You call it journalism." Tamron crossed her arms, pretending to smile, but her hands were shaking. "Run then," she said bitterly. "Go ahead and leave. That's what men like you do. Walk away when things get real." The words hung in the air like a dare. Denzel froze mid-step. The room went dead silent. Slowly he turned back toward her. His stare was cold enough to stop her mid-breath. "No, Ms. Hall," he said quietly, his voice calm but heavy with finality. "Real left this room the moment you mistook humiliation for journalism." Tamron's face went pale under the studio lights. Denzel took a step closer, voice sharper now, conviction replacing anger. "You chase clicks. I chase truth. You pander to outrage. I answer to something higher than ratings." The audience was transfixed. No one moved. Denzel kept going, his tone steady, powerful. "You built a career tearing people apart," he said, "but every time you humiliate someone for entertainment, you lose a piece of your soul. And looking at you now, I'd say there's not much left to lose." Tamron's breath hitched. "You don't get to come on my show and lecture me," she shouted. Denzel didn't raise his voice, but his reply cut her off clean. "It stopped being your show the second you forgot what respect looks like." For a long moment, the two just stood there, one broken by pride, the other anchored in principle. Then Denzel turned to leave, glancing one last time at the mic on her desk. "You chase ratings," he said quietly. "I chase truth. That's why you're sitting, and I'm still standing." He walked off as the cameras stayed rolling, capturing every second of Tamron's silence and the sound of the crowd rising to its feet. When the doors closed, the room was left in a stunned, heavy silence. Tamron sat alone at her desk, staring into the void where he'd been just seconds earlier. The bright studio lights suddenly felt harsh, almost cruel, washing the color from her face. Her smile twitched as she forced out the words, "We'll be right back after the break." But no one laughed, no one clapped. The audience stayed silent, caught between disbelief and secondhand shame. The tension that had built for 20 minutes didn't fade. It hung in the air like smoke. By the next morning, the clip was everywhere. Social media exploded within hours, flooded with millions of views and comments. Denzel's last words became a quote that people shared, reposted, and engraved in captions. "Integrity isn't armor. It's proof you survived the crossfire without losing your soul." It was raw, human, and devastatingly real. News outlets replayed the scene over and over. Commentators called it the moment television lost its filter. Hashtags trended worldwide. Hashtag Denzel vs. Tamron. Hashtag Integrity on Air. Hashtag Truth walked off stage. One headline summed it up perfectly. She came for ratings. He left her with a reckoning, and as the dust settled, one truth became clear. Denzel didn't just walk off a set that day. He walked straight into legend. If you love this showdown, hit subscribe, smash that like button, and let us know your take in the comments. Turn on the bell so you don't miss the next jaw-dropping moment from TV's wildest talk shows. Because trust me, the next one is going to explode.